Back with us on the SportsMax Zone. The recent appointment of Icelander Heimer Hallgrimsson as head coach of Jamaica's Reggae Boys is under threat of being overshadowed by a row between former interim coach Paul Hall and the leadership of the Jamaica Football Federation, JFF. Hall, a member of Jamaica's historic team to the 1998 FIFA World Cup in France, issued a statement on Wednesday in which he expressed disappointment at his treatment by the JFF. He mentioned certain key management principles that are lacking in how the JFF conducts its business. He said, "A successful organization must act with transparency, openness, objectivity, leadership, selflessness, integrity, accountability, and honesty." Now, among the persistent issues Hall said he encountered during his time at the helm of the team were poor standard of training pitches, lack of additional kit for cold weather during the team's World Cup qualifier in Canada, plus the below-par organization of the team's transport. He went on to say, "I am a man of integrity, standards, and principle. I don't believe there are any current international managers who have played that number of games, created a long-term strategy plan, brought in new players without pay. Some remuneration was received on September 8, 2022, the first since last year. However, even this is still nowhere near the full amount." Dennis Chung is chairman of the JFF's Finance Committee. He joins us to respond to some of the claims made by Paul Hall. Dennis, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. Good to see you again.
No, man. Thanks, George.
All right. Let's start with the obvious thing. Paul Hall says the JFF owes him several months' salary and that the payment he got on September 8th this year is, in his words, nowhere near the full amount. True or false, Dennis?
Well, let me put it this way. We have been working as an internal finance committee. The president had asked us to work as an internal finance committee to sort out some of the issues that the JFF is having. And I am the first to admit that it is wrong to owe someone for so long. And I agree that Paul Hall has been owed, along with other people, for quite a while, and mostly because of some internal issues. We've made strides in paying off quite a few other things. We've paid up to 11 of the 14 matches that were owed to the players. And we're having another payment next week, and we've sent a schedule to the manager as to when the other payments will be made. So we're making attempts to pay everything. One of that payment was a payment to the former coach, Paul Hall, which he's right, was paid on the 8th of September and was months late. But what we did is that we paid it based on the internal documentation that we had. So it was paid based on the executed contract that we have in the finance department, which there's nothing more than that we can pay. It was brought to our attention about 2 days ago that he was disputing it, and he sent something as a backup, which was a contract, but that contract only had his signature on it, right? We immediately inquired and we said, is there anything else that can prove that we actually owe him this money? Because we can't pay on a contract which has one signature on it. So a search was done, and it was ascertained that there was some correspondence that was there with him to show that a higher amount was being negotiated. But still, when I asked the question, what is the date of that? The contract that we have in-house, I was told, was at a later date than that. Now, we all know that the last will and testament that is done is a valid one, similarly with a contract. So we can only pay on what we have our hands on. What we will say is that if there is more money owed, definitely we will pay it. That is the mission that we're on, to liquidate all the debts, just like we've liquidated the amount of tax liabilities that we had in the back. That's fully liquidated. So we would invite Mr. Hall to send in any fully executed documentation he has to help to make his case better for us to pay it. But until then, from a governance point of view, we cannot pay based on documentation that we don't have. We can pay on what we have.
Hear you, Dennis. You've said a lot there, a lot of things which have popped my eyes open. So here's the thing. Let's try to distill among some things. You are saying that based on the contract among the parties, which of course would bear the relevant signature from the JFF and Mr. Paul Hall's signature, you're saying you paid against that contract. Am I right?
Yes,
okay.
What we have internal. If there's something else, we'll pay.
We're going to come to that. I just want to make sure that my viewers are following. So you've said that you've paid against that contract, all the parties signing it. You've agreed that that's a valid contract. You've paid against that. First question where that is concerned. Have you paid up all the monies owing as per that contract to Paul Hall?
That is the report that we got at the committee, that we have paid up everything that is owed under that.
All right. You're saying then that he said, well, yes, you paid this on September 8th, but according to this agreement, I am owed more monies and I need you to pay me these excess monies according to this document. You're saying that that contract only has his signature.
Exactly. That is what we were told. Because when that came in, we said, okay, fine. If there is a contract there, let's pay. They said, well, it only has one signature. So I was the one who said, well, we can't pay based on that. But if there's something else, let us find it. And we're still looking to see if we find anything else. But from a governance point of view, we can't pay. We could not pay on that.
Yeah, but you said, you also mentioned where that one signature contract is concerned, that when you checked your records internally to match against what he presented, you found some correspondence and so forth. But who is it that generated that one signature contract? Wasn't it given to Paul Hall by the JFF, if even to consider, but he went ahead and signed it, but nobody from the JFF's end signed it? Is that what happened to what we can refer to as a one signature contract?
I would suspect that might have been the case. But I did not, to be honest with you, ask where that came from, right? But I suspect that could be the case.
Right. So you're saying then also that the sum on the settled contract is different from the sum on the one signature contract, and Paul Hall wants the difference between the two to be paid, and you're saying we can't do that because we didn't sign the one signature contract.
Exactly. So once we get documentation that proves that, then we will pay it. I mean, I will be the first one to say, hey guys, let's find a way to deal with this, because we don't want to owe anybody for so long. And it is really disrespectful and unethical to owe people for so long for the work that they've done.
All right. So you said earlier, and Dennis, I mean, your reputation goes before you. So when you're involved with something, we expect the right things to be done all the time, and for the right things to be done consistently. Paul Hall, and you admitted that he had been owing, the monies had been owed to him for several months under the settled contract, which you ended up paying against. And you said there were some internal issues. But you would realize from his missive that this is what is at the heart of Paul Hall's gross, that he has been owed or had been owed for so long. Yeah. Why was he owed for several months on end, Dennis Chung?
Well, I understand that there was a lack of funds because the World Cup campaign did cost us quite a bit. And because of the COVID situation, we weren't able to generate any money locally. So all of that was in the budget to be generated locally did not happen because there were no spectators at the match. There were some other issues internally. I would say that there were some control weaknesses internally, which we've sorted out, and we're addressing it. We're still addressing those things. And he should not have been owed so long. That's the first thing that I'll say. We should not have owed him money so long. And if we owe him money, then we should pay it. What I was a little disappointed in, though, is that we owed all the money up to the 8th of September. and there was no statement coming out about it. So why is it that when we paid it, that there is a statement coming out without any attempt to reach out to us and negotiate? So I became aware of the social media, and everybody on the board became aware of the social media statement. In our board chat, it was sent to us. I think the right thing to have done is to contact the JFF and say, hey guys, we have a problem. I disagree with people all the time on the board, right, including the president, but we sort it out internally.
But let me ask you this though, and I'm happy you went there with the conversation, because if Paul Hall's statement, you say you want to know, well, what is it that caused him to wait until now after being paid to go public? And I would say, well, clearly, based on my reading of the situation, the statement almost reads to me, Dennis Chung, as if the man is warning the incoming coach about doing business with the JFF, because he cited several things, management principles as you know them so very well from your days in school and your many years in public and private service, that what the basic management principles are. He's warning the incoming head coach that these principles, the JFF doesn't recognize them. I'm also warning you, Paul Hall is saying, based on my interpretation, that the JFF doesn't pay money, the JFF doesn't pay on time, and they will owe you, and then when they owe you, they will frustrate you, then you will be frustrated out of the job, and when you leave the job, you will still be owing. I read that missive from Paul Hall as saying all those things. So that's why he waited until now.
I understand that, and maybe that's so, but then why one hold Jamaica and not the president, not the incoming coach alone?
Because he said, Dennis, that he's been having several discussions behind the scenes, and he's been trying to make it work for himself, his family, and for the JFF. Let me ask you one thing. Can you confirm whether or not Paul Hall was offered the job of Reggae Boys head coach at any time during his tenure?
Yeah, man, he was. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that the discussion at the board was that, hey, when he resigned, we say, hey, let's try get him back. And the directive was given to the president that he needs to get Paul back, because we thought that he had an organized program and that he was the best person at the time. After many attempts, a few attempts, the president reported back to us and said he was not able to get an agreement with Paul, and he was adamant. And that's the report that came to us, that he was not coming back. At that point, right, the directive was given to Rudolph Speed as a technical person to say, hey, go and look for a coach for us.
All right, but hold on, Dennis. When by the time Paul Hall left the job, vacated the post as interim head coach, did he at the time leave with a letter of undertaking to say, Paul, the monies that have been owed to you for X number of months, we will look to pay by such time? Did he leave with that in hand?
I do not think so. And
all right, good. So he did not. Hold on. Right. Okay. So if he did not leave with that, Dennis, and if the JFF board loved him so much to the extent that you advised the president to go and get him back into the fold, don't you think the fact of the man being owed for so long, he leaves the job, you say nothing to him about when he's going to get paid, don't you think that would have stirred the resentment and discontent that translated into this warning letter to the man who will succeed him as the man leading the Reggae Boys?
Yes, and I understand the emotions and all of that. All I'm saying is that the right thing to have done is to just call us before, if he even sent us the post that he was going to make before and say, hey, I'm going to do this post tomorrow, then, that would have even been better. I'm just saying that I would have thought that that is the right thing to do, right? I understand the emotions. I understand the ill treatment that he got, because no one should have been owed so long, and he should have been given that comfort letter, as he said. But all I'm saying is that my question when I saw it is, why speak to all Jamaica before you speak to us? Yeah. If you're going to speak to Jamaica, talk to us first.
So you gave an indicator at the top of the interview, Dennis, that yourself and your colleagues had cleaned up a lot of the financial mess. You spoke about the very important issue of the taxes that were owed, that those have been liquidated in your terms. In terms of a percentage, because you may not have hard numbers, or maybe I'm letting you off easy, but never mind. In terms of percentages, of a percentage, Dennis, what percentage of the debts of the JFF that you were tasked with clearing up when you sat as finance committee chairman, what percentage of those debts have been cleared up, have been settled?
I don't have a percentage figure, but I can say it's a significant amount, because we did owe a significant amount in back taxes also, and that was cleared, right? We did meet with the TAJ on that. We have paid for 11 of the 14 matches that were outstanding. As I said, with another payment coming up next week. The intention also with the game coming up is to ensure that we have those payments in hand to make and to pay off debts that are owed to, for accommodation and some travel. So we're doing all that. I can't say exactly what it is, but I know that a significant amount.
And significant means more than 50%?
I would say more than 50%, yes, is dealt with. And we're identifying funds to liquidate the rest of it. But as I said, the World Cup campaign was an issue because, we couldn't earn any money.
Yeah. Question for you then. So on this day in sports, Dennis Strong, is the JFF broke, less broke, or okay financially?
Less broke. And I think it's getting a little better. It's getting better. By the end of the year, I think we're going to be in a much better position. But, football is an expensive thing.
Yes. And the new man coming in, by the time you all sign that up and unveil him, there's a press conference for tomorrow at the Pegasus Hotel at 2 p.m. You at least have his first month's salary?
Yeah, man. We'll have the funds there, and we've got the accommodation for him and everything already.
Hear you on that. Dennis Strong, thank you for your time today. All the best. We'll talk again.
No problem. All right. Okay.
Good. That's Chairman of the Jamaica Football Federation's Technical Committee, Dennis Strong. Whitaker, you heard it.
Yeah, well, George, as we have said so many times on this show, the state of football in Jamaica at the moment is appalling, as far as I'm concerned. I've heard Dennis Strong, and from a financial standpoint, he obviously has a structured plan to, as best as he can, try to straighten things out. But I think there's a serious issue here with regard to the level of confidence that the football public has in the Jamaica Football Federation. And I heard Dennis talking about Paul Hall, being wrong in, going public with this and not, addressing the hierarchy of the JFF directly. And he is right to say that. But sometimes as human beings, George, we get frustrated. And we don't care about who is hurt and who we want to take some of the stress off our own shoulders. And I think that's where Paul Hall had arrived, which is why he went that route. And the JFF, as far as I'm concerned, has done a pretty poor job in convincing the football public in Jamaica that they are doing a good job. I know that, generally speaking, the public has this anti-establishment culture. You just always want to criticize administration and so on. And for the most part, in my many decades as a journalist, George, I have sympathized with administrators because I think that the average man in the street quite often doesn't know the full story. And there are many things sometimes as a football administration that they are grappling with that the average man in the street doesn't know. But at the same time, I think the level of confidence that the public of football public in Jamaica has in this current JFF is as low as I've ever seen. And the JFF has done very little to change people's minds that it is doing a good job of running football. And everything I heard from Dennis Strong from a financial standpoint, well, that is the narrative that he just gave us. Your questioning was primarily focused on finances. But finances is just a major part, I might add, to the running of football. And I think the JFF is in real problems. Yeah. I'm not sure how this new coach coming in will embrace what he has to work with, because we heard Paul Hall outline the many areas of shortcomings as far as he is concerned, and I have no reason to doubt what he is saying is true. And I just think this JFF are in real problems.
Well, here's the thing, and it's a question I was tempted to ask Dennis Chung. By the way, I'm associating myself with all that you've said.
Yes.
There's a question I was tempted to ask Dennis Chung, but I think it's wasted on him, because Paul Hall is the man who should be asked. And in case you're wondering, viewers, our producer did try to get to Paul Hall. We spoke to the PR agency that sent the statement on his behalf on Wednesday.
Yes.
And the agency responded to say that Mr. Hall is allowing the statement to speak for him at this time, and in short order, well, in due course, not short order, in due course he'll be speaking, elaborating on what he said. So we did try, but we were unsuccessful. But the question is this. If it is, as Dennis Chung is saying, and if we take him at his word, that the JFF paid against, let's use some arbitrary dates to fit in with the narrative. If Paul Hall has a signed contract that he signed in January 2022, signed by all parties, but there is a contract that only has his signature that he signed in March 2022. Lance, how is it that you have a deal with an entity that employs you, and you have a later deal that clearly Paul didn't write a contract for himself and sign it himself? It would have been generated from somewhere. I asked Dennis who generated it. He said he doesn't know.
Yes.
So the reasonable thing to deduce is that the JFF generated that one signature contract and forwarded it to Paul Hall, who went ahead and signed it. But of course, the contract is not valid because it only has one signature. As Dennis correctly said, you can't pay against a contract that only has one signature. But I would like to ask Paul Hall, brethren, how did you have a contract signed by all parties to start with, then found yourself having faith in a better contract, because clearly the terms in that were greatly improved.
Would have been an
more
upgraded,
money.
upgraded contract.
But you alone signed it.
Yes.
And you held it, and now you are claiming payment.
Worthless. It's worthless.
Because you're claiming payment against it, and they're saying, no, as they correct, you can't take them to court because they didn't pay off a contract that only one party signed. So I'd very much like to have Paul Hall explain how you found yourself with two contracts, one of which is worthless, and the worthless one is the one that you're claiming payment against. I'm very keen to know that.
Yeah, George, I know that sports administration is not an easy thing, and a lack of funds can contribute significantly to the failure of an administration properly running a sport. But football is so popular. Football is the most popular sport in the country, certainly most involvement and most played. And there is hardly a football fan that I speak to who believes that this current Jamaica Football Federation is doing a good job.
Yeah.
And as I said a few minutes ago, they have done nothing to convince that narrative that it is wrong.
Yeah.
You know, the JFF has been heavily criticized for the bungling that it consistently is guilty of, and the explanation coming from the hierarchy in the JFF is hardly acceptable most times. So I'm sorry for football's future in Jamaica.
Yeah, well, as we break, it goes back to the old saying, don't tell me you love me, show me. The JFF clearly loved Paul Hall and wanted him to stay, but based on what he said in his statement, they said they loved him, but they didn't show him because they took several months to pay him. And according to him, when they paid him short. According to the JFF, it paid him every cent they were contractually obliged to do. Break time. Back with more of the SportsMax Zone.